Hey, everybody. Welcome to the first ever Good Roots podcast. I'm here with Alex, Seth, and myself, Michael. We really want to thank you for joining us today, and we're going to roll right into Seth. Hey, Seth, why don't you give us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so...
Sorry, guys. They're not used to me sounding so professional.
I know. Yeah, you're the one that's always the goofy one on set.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, my name is Seth Hobbs. I am the owner of Good Roots Collective. It doesn't really mean much, but it is...
It means a lot, dude. Good Roots is sick and awesome.
Well, I love Good Roots, but it really is the team that brings it together. It's not just me. So that's what I meant by that.
So one of the core principles is loving God, loving people, and loving life. Why don't you give us like a quick little excerpt at how that was made and how we're implementing that into Good Roots?
Yeah, so when we started Good Roots, originally started with a friend of mine, Nick Couture, who had this idea of wanting to love one another, essentially to share that love through apparel and selling apparel and then giving to those in need. And so the concept of loving God, loving people, and loving life was just the core foundation of the lifestyle brand that we had. And so those principles meaning, loving God, when Jesus said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind. That's just that principle of, living your life in the way that is pleasing to the Lord and just in everyday life. And then loving others, obviously, is just where Jesus said when he was washing the disciples' feet, he said, they will know you for how you love one another. And that was the core principle of how do we love one another through our actions and through our words and just how we live day to day life, day to day.
Dude, it's such a founding principle. We put it on our hat, dude. We got the love one another right here.
Yeah.
So Alex, kind of coming right off the hip at you, but I want to ask you, one, give us a little introduction to who you are, and then how you kind of got into Good Roots.
I'm Alex McClure. I take photos. I'm a photographer.
Incredible photographer.
And I take some of the photos for Good Roots. What drew me sort of to Good Roots was it was sort of a mix of two things. I started following them on my Instagram page through different communities like We Are Vessel. And I had already been following them. And so they were on my radar for a little bit. But then I met Seth at one of We Are Vessel's
that retreat, right? I remember you guys going on that retreat.
Was it the retreat that we went out up to the cabins? Was that I met you at a worship night.
Worship night.
We went
first.
we met each other at the worship night. I remember because you brought your camera and I was like, "Oh, dude, you take photos."
He takes photography.
You take photography. But yeah,
what
I was
does that even look like? I take photography. It's taking pictures of people who take pictures.
Essentially. But no, yeah, you took photography or you took photos and it was cool because the camera you had was it's the Fuji, what was it?
The Fuji X100.
Yeah, the X100 and on 100V.
Yes.
Yeah. And you were like, oh yeah, it simulates film stock. And I was like, that is the coolest thing in the world. And so yeah that's kind of how we first met.
And we had a great conversation that first time too. I started talking about some of what I was doing for work, carpentry, and went into some of your past too. It was
I remember
basically
him coming
that's how
back.
I met Seth and Good Roots.
Yeah.
And then we just kind of linked up after that.
Yeah, I think I went up to Alex. I think it was after the retreat, or it was during the retreat, or sometime around that time frame. So we were I went up to him. I was like, dude, we would love for you just to be a part and just take some photos and be with us or whatever. And you were like, yeah, I'd love to do that. And then I think you came to one of our meetings.
So I'm Michael. I'm one of I'm the lead photographer, videographer, and graphic artist. I remember actually when I first reached out to Seth, actually Nick Couture was still in the picture at that time. And Nick Couture was one of the guys that just really started Good Roots, and he's just he's a planter. So he planted that seed and then kind of passed it on to Seth to let Seth grow it. But I remember answering or seeing your guys' Instagram and actually like just reaching out. I was actually in this church right here, Fellowship Chapel, and I was looking over. I looked at my girlfriend. I was like, I really like this company. I like what they're doing. I like how they work with nonprofits. I like how they're giving. Like, I really feel like I can get behind this brand. And so I reached out. And I remember it was really funny because Nick actually answered me back. He's like, let me shoot you over to Seth. He's actually changing over operations. You guys were right in the middle of transitioning, weren't you?
Yeah, we were like dead in the center of it. Like he was just about to leave. I think that was like that month, or was that week, or it was towards the end of that week. Like he was right. Like heading out, and that's when he threw you over to me. Yep.
Right. So he like sent me over to you, and you wanted to set up an interview, and I'm like, okay, like this sounds like legit, like okay. And for everybody listening, I'm 31. Okay, let's just make that clear.
Yeah.
So I'm seasoned, and I've worked with different companies and things like that, but so I get this like really technical, like okay, I'd really like to set up this meeting and just like really professional, and I'm like, all right, cool. So like this is legit, bet. So then this face pops up on there during the meeting, and I'm like, you're like 20, which you're not. You're
what? 20. I'm 25.
I know you're 25.
It's all 5 years. How did you think I was 20?
Look at that face, dude.
That's true. I do have a big
I just
face.
hope that during this section, when you edit this, you just do a super close-up zoom on your face. Like I want it to be like,
I will.
Like 380p
100%.
zoom. So yeah, you popped up on there, and you started asking me questions like, where'd you go to film school? Where'd you do this? And I'm like, University of YouTube. Like, I just grew up in photography. And I was like, this guy is like, because you went to film school. You took some proper steps. And I'm like,
well, I asked you. I said, did you go to film school? I didn't assume you did.
Yeah, you're right. You did ask.
Yeah, I asked.
And I was like, well, there goes that job.
Yeah.
That is the first thing I thought.
You want an unpaid job to work with me?
Well, hold on. First off, I didn't like I think I was talking to you and I said like I don't normally charge for like Christian companies and things like that. In that situation, like I don't cause pay. Since then, I get paid. But it's a little different. It's a little different now. Like
different. Yeah.
So anyways, we ended up talking about going on a meeting. That's when Rob came in, and Rob couldn't be here tonight. He'll be on a future podcast and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But that's when Rob came into the picture too.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you guys meet Rob.
I literally I had a meeting with Rob. We went to a coffee shop, and I was just like, dude, I would love for you just to be a part of what we're doing, because I need people like to build this. I can't do this by myself. And he was like, yeah, I don't know what to do yet, but like we'll do it. And then well, once he's on the next like podcast, we'll have to talk about his skill sets. He's an amazing.
He's just
creative,
a creative eyeball.
Yeah,
like if I could pluck that thing out.
Yeah, he's got the voice of an angel.
He does.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
he does. Anyways,
like there's a little story behind me and Rob coming in. So like I guess like Seth, when he was taking over, he was like, "Dear Lord God, help me."
Yeah,
and he started praying and kept praying and kept praying. And then all of a sudden, this weird random guy texted him on Instagram, and I was like, "I am the message to your prayers, brother." No, I'm just kidding. I've been a headache and a thorn in his side ever since we've met.
Just because you're a thorn in my side doesn't mean you're there. You're not there for a purpose.
To annoy you. I think Alex, what do you think? Do you think that's my purpose? Is just gently annoy this guy? Like I think so.
Well, he treats me. Well, we have this like dynamic in our friendship to where. You're like a brother. What's that noise?
That was my
like an old couple.
We are like an old couple.
We are, because like
Ashley, move aside. Just kidding, Ashley.
No. Don't mess. She'll hunt you down.
Oh, do you think so? Uh-oh. Sorry.
But
I would like to publicly apologize to Ashley for any comments that have been made. I was immature and not prepared for that situation.
Anyways,
good night.
Yeah, the dynamic of our friendship is like you're a dreamer, which is a beautiful thing, but like I'm like a practical, like I gotta make a list kind of thing, and so we both do that sometimes.
If I had to describe you, and I've said this to you many times, and I hope any of you out there have seen New Girl, because I'd like to introduce you to the non-Jewish Christian Schmidt to my right here. I noticed,
I'm not like.
I first noticed this when I looked into our Goodroots Google Drive. And I had to click like 30 times to get into the folders.
I do have a very extensive process.
You know what he said? He said, file management.
Yeah.
To what? Like, to like what degree do you stop your file management?
Because everything has its place.
Yeah, like
everything has its place.
But every friend group has that like types. Like, okay, so Alex is like just the chill. I will go with the flow.
Yeah.
I'm the goofball, right?
Well, you're like the sail that will catch any wind, and I'm like having to be the rudder.
Guess I'm a cheap sail. Anyways, no, and you're the, all right, guys, we need to be organized. All right, guys. So you're, oh my gosh, you're the chaperone.
I am.
You're the chaperone.
And I don't mind that because it's, what's nice though, is sometimes it's okay to be the DD because it's, if I can.
What do you mean the DD?
Like the designated driver?
This is water, guys.
Like I'm talking about like in the group.
No, you're the chaperone. It's the chaperone. Like if
we're kind of the same thing, though. I feel.
Yeah, they're both the same thing.
Well, yeah, I guess if they like drink too much, then you kind of have to be the chaperone.
Responsible.
Right. Yeah. We don't drink here at Goodrich, just so we're.
They're
no
like
alcohol.
No alcohol here, not on set.
They're literally having an AA meeting.
I was like, no, I won't say that. But anyways, like the structure. It's weird. So when growing up, I never was that way. Like my mom kind of like taught me how to be like organized because I not suffer, but I have dyslexia. I suffer from dyslexia.
I thought you were gonna say I suffer from organization.
No, I have dyslexia and like ADHD sometimes. And so like it's not super severe, but it's like enough to where I get distracted and like lose priorities and stuff. And so like when I was homeschooled for a little while, which you probably could tell I was homeschooled, I
I couldn't. You're one of the most networked, communicative.
I was only homeschooled until like 5th grade, so it wasn't like
relational people I know. So like this like the stereotype, I guess I would say for like homeschool.
Yeah,
because I was a public school kid, and I'm only speaking in generalities, and I just want to put it out there that I know that that's not how it is.
Yeah.
But if you're going to place yourself in the homeschool category, I don't think you would fit that mold.
Yeah. Well, that's good.
Because your social skills are like I've learned networking from you.
Really? Well, that's a blessing.
I shouldn't have told me that.
Shouldn't have told me that. But no, like I growing up was like my mom just taught me how to like be organized, and I hated it. Like I hated whiteboards. I hated like calendars. I hated like writing stuff down. I absolutely hate it. It was the worst. Like I was very, very resistant towards it. When I finally moved out, I was like, oh, I need to actually like schedule my week and schedule my month. And then it just kind of became this like progressive thing. And then now it's like everything has its place because yeah, the Google Drive has like probably over like 200 like files, but everything has its place. And so
hold on, like let's just break this down though. So like we break down our like content by month, and it's like a new process that we're implementing.
Right.
And so we make the plan and stuff like that. And like me and Seth sat down and we like created our monthly like post schedule and stuff. And any content creator out there understands like, okay, I get exactly what you're doing. That's like it's so brilliant. It helps out a lot. But I left Seth unattended with the file management. So I had to like click like 30 times just to get to the picture to show me what content I need to create, like graphic design wise. And I'm all over the place. I'm like, where is this thing? He's like, well, I moved it over here. And then I had to move it over here because we had to restructure it. Now we got a folder that says like old way of doing things. And then a monthly planner. You click open the monthly planner. You got all your months all set up, which is great. And
which that's good. I color coded them too. To the month, like October is orange.
Do you see what I'm talking about?
It's color coded so that it's kind of like attributed to the month. So October is kind of like orange for fall. You know what I mean? Isn't that cool?
That is a Schmidt comment.
Exactly,
dude. I want to get you a pair of slacks and just see what happens when you snap the pockets, because that was Schmidt's favorite thing. And this is right in this moment is where you overlay that video. Schmidt just snapping the pockets.
I will take the I will take the crown of being Schmidt because it's an honor, honestly.
I love Schmidt.
Schmidt's one of my favorite characters. Anyways, let's move on.
One of my favorite lines he says too is he's sitting in the car and he goes, he said it with Cece. He's like, I'm like a Marine. And she goes, no, you're not. He goes, I'm like a Marine.
My favorite scene is when he goes to like some sketchy area and then like all of his tires and wheels are gone and he just goes out. He's like, youths.
Yes.
He goes, youths.
My last Christian Christmas. That's my favorite line. You ever watch The New Girl, Alex?
I've never watched it.
Oh my gosh. Listen, come over after this. We're making popcorn and we're not moving for 3 days. I love New Girl.
All right, moving on. We're so Alex, with Good Roots, like what is like one of the with loving God, loving others, and loving life, like within those categories, which one is one of the ones that you find the most like impactful for you and like kind of like drew you towards Good Roots?
I would say loving God.
Yeah.
Because you can love God and not necessarily love people. I mean, but like, because there will be times where you have to love God, but you don't have time to love people.
Right.
I don't know what.
I want to challenge that though in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Like not in like, you're wrong or anything, but
No.
I was actually thinking about that a lot, like about love and loving God and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And like loving him is like obedience to him, right? Like obedience to him is like how we love back in a way, right? And part of that obedience would be to love people. Now, I think maybe like not being able to like pose that action, in a certain context, I think that fits. But I think if you're loving God, it kind of encompasses it all. Do you agree?
I think I'd agree with that because, like, even when you love God, like God created each and every one of us. Like, when you love God, you already love like
the closer
all of His creations.
Right. It's like the closer that you move into His love, the better you can love others. Because he said it like, I love because I was loved first, kind of thing, like by God. Right. So it's because of being unconditionally loved, like you can flow through. I like that. One thing we didn't talk about yet was like loving life, and I think that's something that, not as much now, but like in the Christian culture, it can be kind of like a taboo thing to say, like, I love life. Like you kind of, because in the sense of like where we assume loving life is like being kind of the world, like it's like sometimes that can be equated and like misunderstood.
Right, but truly it's not.
Yeah, and it's like loving life. Like I think God has given us so much and just has blessed us with an earth and creation, and then also just like just people to be able to interact with. And I think that's something that, because I know that like we can get caught up in the church and inside of our own bubbles, and it's like we don't enjoy the life that like God has like given us. And I think that's something I really loved about those principles is like you love God first and you love others second, but then loving life is just is just as important because it's something that He's created. And it's not like there's a difference between just getting caught up into the culture versus like I'm going to like basically be a beacon inside of culture, but still love life too, because our life now impacts eternity, and it's like it's important. So that was just something like I wanted to include, and just knowing that that's one of our mission statements that's why it's
I think too statement. Like loving life is showing appreciation for like what He's done in your life too. Right. It's not just like I think there's an equated way to do that. Like if you're just, if you're loving the world, I think it will like bear bad fruit.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? And I don't mean in the sense of like pouring kindness into the world, but I mean like loving the world in the Christian aspect.
Right.
But in the fact of like, if you're loving life and appreciative for what God has done, I think that would help bear fruits of that. I know that like Like Rob is a great example of that.
Yeah.
I can't wait like for him to share that story, but the joy that he continues to have, he like really does a great job of loving life and like showing that good root style, because you look at him and you're like,
you can't not smile.
Right. And it affects you, it impacts you, because it's not because he's loving the world, it's because he's loving life.
Right.
You know what I mean? And
he's preciousness.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And he's such an encouragement. Like and I think that is the good roots style.
Right. Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining us in our first ever Good Roots podcast. We're so excited for this and excited to see and hear the stories that are about to be told.
And if you guys want to connect with us, you guys can find us on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. It's the Good Roots Collective. We'd love to interact with you guys and get to know you guys. We want to give a big shout out to Fellowship Chapel in Sterling Heights for hosting us. We really appreciate them. And if you guys are in the area and looking for a church, it's a great church.
Yeah. Thanks again, everyone. And remember that we are here to love God and love people and love life. And have an amazing day.
Live that Good Roots life.
Spread good roots. Love you.